You know, sometimes the biggest puzzles are hidden in plain sight, tucked away in ancient texts we think we know. Well, today we're diving into a centuries-old mystery from the book of Deuteronomy. It all boils down to one little phrase. And trust me, how you understand it changes, well, pretty much everything about worship in ancient Israel.
There it is. That's the phrase, right out of Deuteronomy 12. And for ages, this handful of words has been the epicenter of a massive debate. For a long, long time, everyone thought the question it was asking was pretty straightforward.
Right. The classic interpretation was, okay, God is commanding that all worship, every single sacrifice, has to happen at one central spot. No exceptions. But if you think about that for even a second, you start to see some pretty major problems.
Seriously, put yourself in their shoes. Let's say you're a farmer way up in the north of Israel. A trip to the temple in Jerusalem isn't just a quick jaunt down the road. It's a week-long trek, one way. To do that for every little offering the law required, it would have been practically impossible. This huge logistical headache got some scholars thinking, wait a minute, maybe we're missing the point entirely.
And this is where things get really interesting. This brings us to a huge shift in thinking, all started by one scholar who basically said, hey, everyone, I think we're all looking at this thing completely backwards.
So this scholar, A. Hawarda, comes along and suggests that this whole debate about one altar versus many altars is just a total distraction. He argued the text isn't actually focused on the number of altars at all. It's focused on something else.
And this right here, this is the core of his argument. Howard pointed out that the real emphasis in that phrase, the place which the Lord your God shall choose, is on the verb. It's on God's choice. See, the real issue wasn't about having one place versus lots of places. It was about stopping people from just building altars wherever they felt like it, which is what the Canaanites were doing all over the place. It was God's choice versus human choice.
So in Howard's view, the system was more nuanced. Yeah, there was a main central sanctuary that was top dog, but God also designated other legitimate local altars. The key condition for any altar was that God had to choose the spot, not people. This made worship practical for everybody, and it gave him a real, holy alternative to all those tempting pagan altars nearby. It's a really smart idea, but another scholar came along and took it to the next level.
So now let's talk about M.J. Pohl, a scholar who built on this idea and came up with a solution that is just so elegant because it solves a whole bunch of other biblical puzzles at the same time.
Pohl called it the two-level system. And the idea is actually pretty simple, but wow, it's a game changer. He said, look, the laws in the Bible aren't all talking about the same thing. Some laws are specifically for the one national sanctuary, the tabernacle or the temple in Jerusalem. But other laws are for the many local altars that were all over the country.
And here's the light bulb moment. Pohl argued that Deuteronomy 12, the chapter with that famous one-place rule, isn't a ban on local altars, not at all. It is exclusively a rulebook for the national sanctuary. It's just not talking about local worship. And once you see that, a lot of things that looked like contradictions, they just melt away.
Okay, so once you have this two-level key, it starts unlocking all these other doors. It doesn't just solve the travel problem, it helps make sense of some of the most famous so-called contradictions in the Bible.
You see, for over 100 years, this super influential theory, the Wellhausen theory, basically said that the laws in Exodus and Deuteronomy are in total conflict. The theory went that Exodus was from an early period that allowed lots of altars, and Deuteronomy was from a later period that demanded only one. But what if that whole theory was based on a simple mistake?
Check this out. This chart lays it all bare. Turns out both Exodus and Deuteronomy have laws for local altars and laws for the national sanctuary. The big mistake Wellhausen made was that he was comparing the local altar laws from Exodus with the national sanctuary laws from Deuteronomy. It's a classic case of comparing apples and oranges. Of course they look different. They're for two different things. When you actually compare the local laws to the local laws and the national to the national, the conflict just vanishes. The laws were meant to work together. And you know what? This same idea solves another really confusing puzzle, the high places. If you've ever read through the history of the kings of Israel, the high places can be super confusing. Some kings get praised, but then they get criticized for not tearing them down. Other times the text says they did tear them down. It feels like a total contradiction.
King Asa is the perfect example. In one book, it says he didn't remove the high places. You flip over to another book, and it says he did. So what gives? How can both possibly be true?
Well, it turns out the Bible itself leaves us a perfect little clue that solves the whole thing.
This verse, right here, from 2 Chronicles, is everything. It makes this critical distinction. It says people were sacrificing at the high places, but, and this is the key, only to the Lord. This tells you right away that not all high places were the same.
So it all clicks into place. The big fight wasn't about centralizing all worship in one spot. It was about purifying the worship everywhere. It wasn't about the location, it was about what was happening at that location. So King Asa went through and destroyed all the high places being used to worship foreign gods. But the ones where people were legitimately worshiping the Lord, he left those alone. And just like that, the contradiction is gone.
All right, so let's zoom out. What does all this actually mean? What's the big takeaway here? Because it's about way more than just an ancient debate. It's really a lesson in how we read and understand things.
So let's just nail this down one more time. 1, the command for one place was only for the big national sanctuary. 2, it was never ever a ban on having multiple legitimate local altars. And 3, as soon as you see that the law works on these 2 different levels, all those supposed contradictions just disappear.
And you know, the real lesson here isn't just about ancient altars. It's about how we read, period. It's about the importance of digging a little deeper, of looking past the surface to find the real context and structure of what's being said. By just asking a different question, the whole picture changed.
And that's the thought I want to leave you with. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? If a rule that seems so simple and straightforward for so long was actually this deep and this nuanced, what other simple ideas are out there just waiting for us to ask the right question?